Welcome to One Cool Thing here at PC Mag. I'm John Burek. This is Matt Buzzy. We are here this morning with a new Dell Detachable, which we opened the box and we'd seen it a few months back and had forgotten that it had taken this new form factor. So Matt and I were having this discussion yesterday about the new XPS 13 2-in-1, and we're saying it's a detachable.
Yeah, the 2-in-1's been around, but it's been a convertible, it's pretty standard now these days. Convertible, you can rotate the hinges around, fold the keyboard behind the screen. That's how the 2-in-1's been in the past. This is now, as you may most easily be able to compare it to the Microsoft Surface-like design, where there's a separate keyboard, which we'll touch on, and the main device is actually a tablet. So this is the entirety of the PC, as it were, but it's really a Windows tablet. And obviously that means it's super light, super thin, but there's obviously also some concessions that go along with that. And it's a pretty big change, which we'll get into. The XPS 13 lineup now has 3 different products, and they've all kind of changed. So it's a bit of an interesting shift. Normally I would have been like, okay, 2-in-1 XPS 13, I know what to expect, but this is a bit of a curveball.
Right. Yeah, so the original I put in quotes, XPS 13 2-in-1 was a yoga style device where it rotated, screen came around, and you could turn it into a tablet, but the keyboard stayed attached to it.
Right.
This is retaining the same name, but it's got sort of the Surface Pro design where you pull the screen off of a base.
We'll show you that instead of talking about it. Now, off the bat, $9.99 is the base model for the tablet, and this is sold separately, but you can pretty easily, while ordering, add a stylus for or a keyboard. This is kind of a keyboard and cover and stand in one. It's called the XPS Folio, and this is another $100. So you can go from $9.99, add $200 onto that if you want the pen and the Folio, but you can also get either or neither. But I will say, much like the Surface, to kind of make this a hybrid laptop, to make this a laptop replacement, you kind of need the keyboard and the kickstand. Otherwise, it's a tablet, which is fairly useful, but a Windows device you want to use as a PC, generally speaking. And it doesn't really come alive unless you use the keyboard and the stand. Yeah, one of the things you had mentioned when we were discussing this before we went on air was, unlike some of the other Windows tablet designs, you can't just use it on its own and stand it up on a desk. It doesn't have a built-in kickstand, right? Right.
So like a typical Surface Pro does have a fold-out leg, right? Some of the other 2-in-1 designs or 2-in-1 detachable designs like this have a built-in leg or some other solution to make it stand up on its own. But this one is
just the tablet. It needs the stand. So you saw me snap it into place. That gives it a nice cover. This is good for just carrying around or throwing in your bag. But to actually use it, you take the stand. I'll try to make this easy to see. This is how it looks on the back. You can snap it into place, and then you can fold it down, which kind of gives it these angles of adjustment. So unlike the Surface adjustable kickstand, it doesn't have infinite angles to kind of stop at. There are 2 magnetic strips where you can stop this, and that way it adjusts the screen angle for the viewer. It's pretty easy to do. I got a little confused when I probably opened this the first time and didn't really get how this triangle formation should lay out, but it becomes apparent pretty quickly. This kind of default, this one of 2 angles is a little too upright for most angles, I would say, unless you're sitting really
really vertical.
Yeah,
right.
If it's really in your face. I think this other one that's a little bit more leaned back is probably
maybe it's our posture.
Yeah, maybe it is my posture. I can feel myself slouching as we're sitting here, so it probably is me. But yeah, so then you get this pretty familiar at this stage. I think the Surface Pro's been around long enough. This isn't going to surprise too many people. We've seen a lot of other companies sort of imitate, and Dell. I'm trying to look into the logic of, again, we can get into this a little bit more when we're done talking about this specific product, but why the shift to this detachable form factor?
Right. I have to say, the keyboard deck, when I looked at it, I was like, this is very, very Microsoft type cover, right? If you look at the way the keys are constructed, there's no island or rim around them.
Yep.
It's very much square, wide, flat keys, and even feels very much like a type cover. As a matter of fact, I was looking at it, I was kind of like, I'm wondering, is this made by the same folks? Even the folds on the back, if you show the back of the Folio when you flatten it and close it up,
those lines,
those fold lines. I mean, there's only so many ways you could do a stand, I suppose, but this looks awfully type cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
One small note: there's a nice little groove here for the camera, because I was first wondering how that would work, and it goes right over. Pretty clever.
Oh, the camera protrudes in the back.
Yeah, there's a world-facing camera, as Dell refers to it, which is very high resolution. So I mean, that's nice, because a lot of people, it's kind of a joke at this point using your iPad to record something. But I guess since this is a Windows machine, you may actually want to be recording a presentation or anything like that. So it's a nice high-res, I think you can record to 60 FPS too. Video camera on the rear.
Ah, okay. So the world was that way.
The world was that way.
Now it's that way.
The user's this way, yeah.
Okay,
this is more standard. I think it's a 1080p camera as well. So 2 good quality cameras, which For the build quality, as far as the build quality goes, and as far as the kind of feature set, 999 is a pretty good starting point. It's a U series processor, so it's 12th gen, but it's U series, which kind of limits the power. But it's actually the same processor that's in the regular XPS 13, which we didn't love as much this year. It kind of toned down the power, it doubled down on portability and thinness, but you lost a little bit of the usability. And I think that might be especially true now that this exists, because they're using the same processor, they're roughly the same price, so it's kind of like the same system, and one's in a tablet form factor and one's in a super thin ultra portable form factor. Gotcha. That might be what Dell wanted. It's like maybe the same device concept and then pick what format it comes in, but it's a little bit like there's no power option now.
Right. Well, it may also come down to the fact that if this is fanless, it's probably not going to hit the peak clocks that, say, the XPS 13 would, which has more real estate for cooling and, active cooling. Whereas here, you might, in sort of CPU intensive operations or things that, sort of are hitting the system constantly, notice a difference. We'll see when we benchmark it.
Right.
But that's, I suspect, probably what's going on here. And a lot of these fanless type tablets that we've seen in the past, which used, they don't call them that anymore, but remember the old Y series processors from Intel? That might be, even though it's a U, it might be operating almost like the equivalent of a Y once you factor in the thermal limitations.
U with a cap on it,
Right, or asterisk,
Yeah, speaking of other limitations of the tablet, there's 2 USB-C ports with Thunderbolt 4 and much like the Surface Pro 9 and the XPS 13 standard laptop and the XPS 13 Plus, which is a new kind of design they're trying out this year too, no headphone jack. So they do include USB-C to USB-A and USB-C to 3.5 millimeter jack adapters in the box. So I can only complain so much about you took away our headphone jack. For some people, they don't care. I think the logic in the systems we've seen it in, which is so far really just XPS products and Microsoft Surface products, that the shopper for these kind of devices is a bit more premium. They probably have a nice wireless earbud set or headset, so it's not really going to be a loss to them if they can't plug in their headphones. I do think it's a nice option to have, but the jack the adapter kind of eliminates your room to complain too much. You can still plug it in. You do got to carry the adapter around with you. So
and you got this slick looking machine here, and then you've got this funky, adapter dongle thing hanging off the side. The other thing I would say is
you only have 2 ports to work with. First of all, one's for charging, and if the other is using a headphone jack, then
they're kind of The other thing too is just the positioning of them too. I realize that if you're going to be using this on the plug all the time, you're going to have a USB-C / Thunderbolt 4 cable coming out of the side, going to power, which is a little bit
But by the time you fuddle with that and the stand and the dongle, you're going to kind of be reaching. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're working on it, in a mobile, situation, you're in a coffee shop or on a tray table on a plane or whatever, you're probably running off battery and that's fine. Yeah. But just the positioning of those 2 ports is a little bit like right in the middle of things.
Yeah. So I mean, it works, and this performance in our preliminary tests is capable. It's again the same processor, so it's going to be fine for everyday tasks. This isn't going to be a powerhouse if you want like a media editing system. Look for something more powerful. But as far as popping it open, doing some word processing, answering emails, and getting a nice kind of build quality and experience, it's a good product.
Right. I am wondering though about that camera sticking out the back there. It just strikes me as one of those things where it's like clunk, clunk, or you run something down the edge. Something I'm a little afraid of that getting dinged or.
Yeah, no protrusion. I guess you could at least say you can cover it with this while it's in motion. So should be able to protect it.
Fair enough. Is this what is this up here? This little oval on the top edge. That's
I'm not sure. That might be a receiver.
Oh right, it's letting the Wi-Fi antenna signal get through.
Yeah.
Right, I was wondering if there was like a privacy shutter thing going on there for the camera, but I guess not.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean overall it does work. We do have here the regular XPS 13 that we've alluded to. Obviously the same concept, but as you can see, it's a regular laptop. It's super thin. They're both super thin. I mentioned the XPS 13 Plus earlier, which is a new that product debuted this year, and it's kind of a future-looking attempt at the XPS design. It has a flush keyboard and these LED function row and a couple of other twists. But I would say that now the 3 products are very, very similar. I'm not necessarily sure what advantage going to the detachable form factor brings. I guess people like it or prefer it, and it does allow it to be really light and portable. So if your main concern is just something to tuck under your arm or carry around with you and you move around a lot, this is a lighter version and a thinner version than the 2-in-1 convertible old form factor would have been able to offer. But performance-wise and kind of concept-wise, they're all pretty much
flat. Yeah. Well, one thing I would say is that if you really were serious about using one of these as a tablet, this will definitely sort of serve purpose much better than the original XPS 2-in-1 did. Because when you folded it around, remember you've still got the keyboard in the back.
Yeah, I don't know how much people ever loved having the keyboard on the back of their hands. It feels a little wrong.
Yeah, I mean, with 2-in-1s, it's just kind of that general thing, right? Where if you're going to really use it as a tablet, a detachable design and performance is adequate for what you need it for. A detachable design is going to be kind of what you're after. If you're going to use it once in a while as a tablet, or are you going to do like the prop it up and give a presentation thing, then the rotating 2-in-1 is kind of more your speed. Right. So it's interesting though that Dell decided not to add because I know in the past they've had latitudes, right? They've had the Latitude 2-in-1 detachable and the Latitude 2-in-1, and the 2-in-1 was a rotator, and the detachable was obviously a design like this. But here it's
supplanted. It's 3 systems.
Yep.
So I mean, I kind of get it on one hand, but I think on the other, it's less unqualified recommendation. There's more caveats. It's more like, well, if you're this kind of user, maybe look for this one. But they all kind of have some give and take.
Yep. Yeah, you have to really want a Windows tablet is what it comes down to. So actually, price-wise, did we discuss earlier on the fact that this starts at $999? You were saying, without the keyboard and stylus, which isn't shown here, but the XPS 13 ordinary clamshell laptop starts at $999. Period, and it's sort of out of the box a full-fledged laptop. Yeah. So something to bear in mind, around
the price. You get a keyboard, right? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And it's the same processor. I think they have the same processor options. This is the 1230U Core i5, and that's what the XPS 13 regular laptop starts with also, and I think they both can go up to the 1250U, whereas the XPS 13 Plus, hope that's not too confusing, has a Core i7, which is a P series processor, so it's a little more power, but none of these are like super productivity machines.
Right, but I mean, there's definitely a step up though from the U to the P, and also
especially for the tablet form factor. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So interesting. There's a lot to talk about with the XPS products for sure. But,
but yeah, if you covered like the top half, I would say, hey, nice Surface you got there.
Right.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep. Well, as far as I can tell, also one small thing, the one of the good things about the Surface keyboard is it can, and others have replicated this. You can kind of. It's hard to demonstrate because it doesn't do it, but you can push this up and it snaps onto the bottom of the screen.
Oh, it doesn't do that.
Which creates a slanted typing angle.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Which is nicer, and this is just flat. So that's another kind of. The Folio is, I think, cheaper than a lot of the Surface keyboards, but not by it. I think it's probably by $30 or so.
Yeah, I think the high end type covers are $179 if I'm not mistaken.
I think there's a $130 or $120.
Yeah, there's a cheap version. There's a cheaper one. This one is $99. You said. Yeah. But right, yeah, that's right, because it's usually got that sort of ribbed thing in here, and it's got like a magnetic thing that snaps onto the bottom of the screen, and it sort of elevates so you're kind of stuck with the sort of the flat typing experience here. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you could think of? Or I think we covered all around the edges.
We covered all of it. I think the base model is 8 gigs of memory, and 512 gig SSD is as low as it goes, and you can go up to a terabyte or 16 gigs. So, there's room for upgradability, and the configuration options are pretty good. I know right now this is on sale, which helps for Black Friday. But in general, the starting price isn't too bad. But if you can get $100 or $200 off while you're shopping for this, it makes kind of the power ceiling and the compromises even more palatable. Right. I think.
Cool. Well, we'll see how it actually stacks up against the actual XPS 13 clamshell and against the Surface, Pros that we've tested recently. As soon as you get done with your benchmarking, which is underway at the moment. But for now, it looks like Surface has got another competitor in the field. So I
think the Surface did its job and inspired manufacturers to make products in that vein.
Which is the point, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So very good. So we will be looking at the XPS 13 2-in-1 in much more detail in the next few days. Thank you for joining us. I'm John Burek. This is Matt Buzzy. We will see you again soon with the next hot product that comes through our labs.